morning, Congress, and welcome back to Day 3 of the 128th Congress. Can I remind you of the following? Delegates are encouraged to use the hashtag STUC25 when posting on socials. Daily Congress sessions are being recorded and will be available at the end of each day on the STUC YouTube channel. Delegates can follow the live discussion of Congress on the STUC website. Visit the Congress 2025 page and follow the link. Congress, there will be a fire alarm test this morning at 11 a.m. There is no need to evacuate the building. It's a test. Congress, before we move on, I would like to take this opportunity to thank MSPs who have joined us over the last 3 days of Congress: Richard Leonard, Monica Lennon, Maggie Chapman, Ross Greer, Carol Mauchline, Mercedes Villalba and Michael Mara. Thank you, colleagues, for taking time out of your diaries to join us at Congress. Delegates will begin this morning's session with the address from Savannah Taj, General Secretary of TUC Cymru. Welcome, Savannah.
Thank you so much, President, for your warm welcome. And finally, because I am here in person and not stuck up on a screen, I have been meaning to be here for a very long time, so it's great to finally make it. So, what is it that I'm going to talk about today? I've got lots of notes, and I do have this weird habit of going off my notes, and my team often say, "What the hell, Shav? We thought you were going to say the following, and you've gone and said something else." But the reality is that first and foremost, what I do want to say is that our solidarity doesn't stop at the border. We stand very much shoulder to shoulder because we have got shared histories. We've got shared histories, but we've also got shared victories, but we've also got that shared vision for the future, because we're really clear that regardless of who you are or where you come from, you will always be welcome in our countries. I bring solidarity from TUC Cymru and fraternal greetings from the TUC as well. Millions of workers who are members of trade unions from every single profession, from every belief, I pay tribute to every single one of them, and also all of the workers who have organised this conference. Scotland and Wales share so much in common. We share our values, we share our community, we share our complete and utter clear stance on standing up for the underdog. That is who we are. We've seen the devastation that has been caused by for so many years by the successive led Westminster government and the Tories when they were in power. But we've always said that we're going to demand better. We finally now have a government in Westminster that is also the same colour of government in Wales. And actually, the truth of the matter is that doesn't necessarily always make it easy. It's actually a bit of a challenge, to say the least. Because from a union perspective, of course, we're very clear. We believe in public services. The public services should be run for the people and not for profit. We believe in being a welcoming, inclusive society, not one that's being divided by hatred and fear. And of course, with the upcoming elections, those shared values are going to mean more than ever before. Because this isn't just about party politics, it's about choosing. It is about choosing the kind of future that we want to build, and that we really have that choice ahead of us. Do we want a future? Do we want a future where workers have real rights? Do we want a future where care is valued and not commodified? Where every single voice counts, no matter who you are or where you're from? So my first message for you today is this. Ignore the naysayers in the right-wing press. Ignore those in politics who don't value health or education unless it comes with that magical price tag. Instead, continue to be proud to be a union member with a strong sense of social justice, who chooses what's right and not what's right-wing. Conference last year was a momentous year for our movement. Yes, we were able to get that UK Labour government to get the Employment Rights Bill delivered within the first 100 days, and the minimum service levels legislation defeated before it was ever used. But let's be clear, what is it exactly that we want from this legislation? We don't want any minor tweaks here and there. We want to have bold, sweeping changes. We want to have that right to organise, that right to a secure contract, the right to strike without fear, that right to work with dignity, equality and respect. And of course, one of the things that inevitably I'm going to talk about is fair work, and fair work sits really nicely alongside all those things that we want from this new employment legislation. But Congress, fair work alone isn't going to feed people. That is the reality. Fair work isn't going to help the workers in Grangemouth or Port Talbot. I cannot stand up in front of those workers and talk about fair work when actually they can't see a future for themselves, where they can't see that actually we have an industrial strategy that is going to deliver good jobs, that is going to deliver a serious future going forward. So that pain and that frustration that they are feeling when their jobs are being cut and their industries are decimated, and when local towns and communities and all of the supply chains are going bust overnight, that is very real. And we've got to recognise that. But after 14 years of the Tories failing to invest in industrial planning, while other countries continued investing in future-proofing their industrial heartlands, the UK government now has a real choice. They can act and help traditional industries transition or continue to lose jobs. Sticking our heads in the sand gets us absolutely nowhere. There's a global race to produce the next generation of cars, of steel, of trains, and we've got to be a part of that future. Let's invest in our UK manufacturing. Let's reduce reliance on foreign imports. Let's create good jobs here in Wales, up and down the UK. Let's invest in wind, and let's invest in solar energy, and let's protect ourselves from the shocks and conflicts, and let's get that mix of balanced energy going as well. And of course, let us see that wealth fund. When are we going to see the wealth fund that we've been promised? When is it that we're going to see that actually materialize? Because without good jobs and without good industries, we don't actually have the necessary funds that we then need to invest in good public services. And so many of our public services, as we know, are on their knees. So when we talk about access to fair work, we can't talk about watering anything down. There can't be any backsliding. We can only move forward. And of course, as I say, this is a key area of interest for us in Wales, but also for you in Scotland. It's not just a slogan. It's about respect. It's about making sure that every single person has decent pay, a secure job, and a voice at work. Fair work cannot be negotiable. It is the dignified foundation of a fair society. And I also now want, of course, talk about dignity of those of the loved ones. Social care should never be a playground for profiteers. Caring is for public good. It should be publicly funded, it should be publicly delivered and rooted in compassion, not the bottom line. It is time to take profit out of care and put dignity back in. Welsh trade unions have been proud to work with our Welsh Government to eliminate profit from the care of looked after children. It is wrong for companies to make profit out of the need for care and support for some of the most vulnerable children in society. Let's get some of that similar legislation enacted here in Scotland and across the rest of the UK. Now, while I was on my way here, I had a good look to see what it is that you're currently going to be also focusing your Congress on, and what are the big debates that you are going to be having. And of course, I know that here in Scotland, like it is in Wales and elsewhere, AI is the inevitable hot topic. It is important that AI works for people, not the other way around, and that doesn't mean that we should be against it. Which is why at STUC Cymru, we've also then really had a look at this, and we've said that we've got to take a cautious but welcoming approach. So we've carried out our research to understand the impact of AI on disabled workers, on women, on LGBTQ+ people, young workers and black workers, and that research was clear. AI has got that potential. It's got the potential to transform the world of work, but there's a real danger. There's a real danger that inequalities are further entrenched rather than eroded. Technology should lift workers up. It shouldn't be pushing them back down. Progress without social justice is plain old that it is exploitation, dressed up in shiny packaging. We know the workers have got to be upskilled and they've got to have an equal say when it comes to that technology. And we've got to see positive and proportional outcomes. Back in December, we negotiated an agreement, some guidance on the use of AI and technology in the devolved public sector. And I'm now proud to say that we are currently exploring the possibilities of our government in Wales actually moving to a position of legislating to protect the devolved public sector when it comes to AI. And I think, again, that's another area of work that we can definitely work together on as well, because ultimately we don't have to wait for Westminster to give us all the answers. We have got a government here, we have got devolution, and there are things that we can be pushing for in the here and now. Another area that I know that you've been focusing, of course, on is the deep-rooted commitment to tackling sexual harassment in the workplace and violence at work. It is a stain on our workplaces from Arbroath to Aberystwyth that we still even have to actually discuss this. We should no longer be having to discuss this at all. It's not banter and it's not part of the job. We've got to recognize how violence at work and sexual harassment often intersects. And we also know that bad employers continue to try and silence people when they come forward. And we will not stand by and we will not be silenced. And whilst I talk about standing by and not being silent, I also now, of course, want to turn to the far right. Tackling the far right, and while friends, of course, it is important. It's important that we fight for better rights at work. We've also ultimately got to fight for the soul of our communities. We have got to make sure that every single trade union member, but also so many of our trade union activists who are now starting to wonder whether the other alternative is reform, does not become the majority. We've genuinely got to get a plan together, we've got to have a strategy, and we've got to have some of those difficult conversations. We've got to understand why people are looking in the other direction. It is for our movement to lead the fight back. Because we know, working people know, it is not your neighbor, it is not your colleague or the refugee or the migrant who's driving down wages or closing hospitals. It is the millionaires and it is the bad bosses. Reform tell us that they stand up for workers. They tell us that, but they don't actually support the employment rights bill when it comes down to it. They tell us that they want to save the NHS, but in the same breath, of course, they talk up the fact that potentially we could have this US style of an insurance system. But let's be honest, they haven't got a plan. They don't know what they're doing. Whether it's in Scotland or whether it's in Wales, they haven't even got a person. We don't even know who this person is. I mean, is Nigel Farage now responsible for every single part of reform? I mean, is he going to be the person that's going to be standing up in front of workers in Wales, in Scotland, and saying, this is what you should do and this is what my grand plan is? I mean, I just don't believe it at all. And it is right. You know, people are angry. They're pretty pissed off, to say the least. They're pissed off because they just can't see a future for themselves. They can't see what, you know, on one hand, we're seeing, of course, good news around the employment rights bill. But then when we see all the changes that we are seeing as far as welfare is concerned, that hits home. That hits home for so many people. And we know that when it comes to, you know, trying to get an appointment with your GP, for example, it feels like a lottery ticket. It feels like you've won something when you're number 15 or number 20 in the line and you go in, okay, I'm about to give up, and now all of a sudden they go, ooh, you're next. And you think, oh, I better hold on. And then it feels like you're holding on forever and ever in a day. Strong public services, of course, have got to be that beating heartbeat of our strong nation. But look, I'm very clear. When it comes to, you know, I think that what the UK government is doing, as STUC Cymru, we are really clear that no one should be punished for being disabled. Cuts to PIP, Cuts to PIP are going to push disabled people further into hardship. And we say that that's not just wrong, it's actually plain and simply cruel. We don't need cuts dressed up as reform, and we agree there's obviously a case for change, but change has got to be done in the right way. Unions have got to be around the table. And it was really good to see PCS give evidence to one of the Parliament committees to actually talk about the realities. Talk about the realities of one, being that person that has to meet with the individual to try and make sure that they have the proper support that they need, but equally being on the other side of actually your own wages at risk. And actually, even with the rising minimum wage, your pennies above, just about, and you're still struggling to actually get by. 1 in 6 workers are still having to skip a meal. That choice between heating and eating is still a very big reality. And disabled people who can't work are being forced deeper into poverty. Look, Congress, I know that you would agree. Welfare should be a safety net, not a trapdoor. So let's make sure that we refuse to leave anyone behind, that we fight together, that we stay together. And that is why I'm going to end on this. There's upcoming elections. There's going to be elections happening here in Scotland. There's going to be elections happening in Wales as well. And it's going to have to be about choosing. But in order to choose, people have got to be able to see something. They've got to feel like something is different. They've got to genuinely feel that sense of hope. They've got to literally kind of like, okay, you know what, this month, things were a little bit different. When I went out and I did my weekly shop, or when that bill came through the door, actually it felt different. I saw that difference. And until that happens, the reality is that we will continue to lose people. We will continue, sadly, to lose people who will punish governments who are currently in power, like we saw with Brexit. I never thought that we would end up in that situation in Wales, but we did. Wales voted to leave. And now we are in the situation that we're in, where we're hoping that we can reset that relationship. But the reality is that when we talk about who we are as a movement, and we talk about solidarity, and we talk about standing shoulder to shoulder, it is also then important for me to say that we need to think about the fact that we are internationalists, that we demonstrate our solidarity as a whole. I know that in Scotland, as in Wales and elsewhere, we are very clear in our position in demanding a free Palestine and a ceasefire now, an immediate ceasefire, a long-lasting ceasefire. And only by having those things and having a free and recognized Palestine on a global scale will we actually ever get to a position where we could potentially negotiate that two-state solution. But the truth of the matter is, of whether you're in Ukraine or whether you're in Sudan or whether you are elsewhere, right now, every single one of us, or even here in the UK, we need hope. We need hope for a future, a real chance to build, a real chance to actually see that when it comes to the next generation, that they feel like there is a reason why they should stay and fight back. There is a reason why they should join a union. There is a reason why they should organize and they should mobilize. So Congress, when it comes down to it, let's vote for better. Let's push and let's agree here today that we keep moving forward with that renewed spirit, with our shoulders back and our heads up held high. Because the future, it's not something that is done to us, it is something that we build together. We are the pioneers. We are the doers. We are the builders. And by working together, there is absolutely nothing that we cannot change. Diolch yn fawr, thank you very much.
Thank you, Savannah, and please take our best wishes back to the TUC Cymru, and we look forward to our special relationship, our working together and improving and building on that relationship. Thank you for that fantastic speech. Congress, we will move now on to the section 3 of the agenda, economy and industry. Congress, I will call Composite Q, artificial intelligence, automation and just transition, covering amendments 5 and motion 29. I invite Unite to move the composite. Thank you, Delegate.
Congress, Colm Mackay moving Composite Q on behalf of Unite. Congress, there are a range of issues covered by this motion, and the scale of the impact of AI on our industry's work and society is far-reaching and only beginning to be understood. Over the past few years, Unite has been working across our sectors, identifying jobs that could be at risk. We've put together a guide for our reps, officers and workplace strategies to defend jobs.
Sorry, Delegate. Can I just ask people just to, if they're leaving the hall, give the delegate some respect in terms of moving the motion? It is a bit loud. Thank you.
We've put together a guide for our reps and officers and workplace strategies to defend jobs, skills, pay and conditions as AI inhibits our working lives in ways that could be detrimental, particularly in regard to surveillance of workers. Through example, checking when people log in and log on and log out, whether they're at their desks and what software they have open on their computers. Reading the content of employee emails and other messages, looking for keywords or conducting so-called sentiment analysis. Measures and assessing workers against output performance targets, other KPI benchmarks. AI is here. It's becoming an increasing feature of our work, and as trade unionists we must adapt and approach through our collective bargaining agreements to secure our future. That means developing agreements such as new tech agreements, developing skills, anticipating strategies that identify the jobs that our economy will require, as well as those at threat of being lost to AI. Looking at upskilling and unnecessary investment in training and skills. It also means looking at how we are organised, negotiating the future for our members across every sector, defending high-quality unionised jobs, greater workplace democracy and an effective trade union voice for workers, with pay and conditions protected and improved. From how our health service providing patient diagnosis administrative services to new manufacturing techniques, AI will change our working lives. And as we see across our industries, a just transition is not certain. Just look at the current situation in oil and gas and renewables. We cannot wait for others. We must be leading a transition fought for through the trade union campaigns, led from our workplaces at industrial, political and community level. In relation to AI, there will be employers across Scotland who will look to propose closure and job cuts. Their flawed and unacceptable version of transition planning will be to reduce investment in people in preference for the technology to boost profits. It will be for our movement to fight against the investment in skills and apprenticeships, looking at public ownership models to build a fair future for everyone based on redistribution of wealth and community renewable, as opposed to profiteering and controlling other industries by the billionaire classes. More than ever, workers at the union reps must adopt an approach that looks forward, anticipates the future of work and considers the skills that will be necessary. Unite is already doing work in our sectors, building our knowledge of how we will impact our workplaces. Because jobs, skills and our intellectual property are not simply assets to be exploited as trade unionists. We are charged with protecting our collective interests. Unite is calling for a number of simple structural agreements to be in place to ensure AI does not negatively impact workers. This includes the extension of collective bargaining to include the scope and introduction of technologies and the establishment of workplace new technology committees. Models of industrial democracy which provide a collective representation by trade unionists at every level of business. Employer duties covering the collection, handling and use of our data, as well as the rollout of AI and other technologies in safe critical areas where worker or public safety are at risk. Strong enforcement rights covering the control, gathering, sharing and use of workers' information and data. Legislation to identify areas where workers must be retained in place to maintain public safety. A future of AI Technologies Commission involving trade unions, employers, research councils and academics. In sectors such as finance, where technology has raced ahead, we have been campaigning for the upskilling of workers to prevent redundancies through job displacement. Our campaigns will grow from our workplaces, from the lived experience and knowledge of our reps. We will need to take our arguments and campaigns to improve jobs to every level, from industry to government. The necessity of our campaign to deliver for our members will require a multifaceted approach, from workplace to Parliament, from workplace agreements to campaigns delivering legislation. The future of our workplaces and the livelihoods of those in our class depends on standing up and delivering a transition that secures a positive outcome for workers. Let us rise and win for workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on USDA to second the composite motion. Thank you.
Good morning, Congress. Rebecca Ross, Union of Shop, Distributive and Allied Workers, seconding this composite motion. Congress, workers have always been exposed to some level of technological change, but over the last few years, the scale and pace of this change has been unprecedented. There have been estimates that automation is expected to cost Scotland 230,000 jobs over the next decade, and according to more recent figures, 9 in 10 employees in the UK will need to retrain by 2030. Yet many workers don't feel prepared for the future of work. USDA's own research shows that over half of workers don't believe they've been given adequate training on the use of technology in their workplace. This is why the decision by the Scottish Government to cut funding to the Flexible Workforce Development Fund makes no sense. The fund wasn't perfect, but it was crucial in supporting skills and training across Scotland. So this decision is hugely disappointing and one we want to see reversed. And whilst the UK Government has committed to reforming the apprenticeship levy, a move we more than welcome, we still need to ensure Scottish businesses can access their fair share of this fund. But it's not just a question of funding. We need to make sure apprenticeship programmes are fit for purpose in sectors that see constant change and transformation. This is why we need an urgent review of the retail modern apprenticeship to ensure it offers relevant training, that it is suited to the needs of workers and their jobs, and that it is accessible to the workforce. To ensure this accessibility, we need a legal right to paid time off for training and a focus on digital learning for all workers. In a wider sense, we need to address the unequal impact of new technology and automation, both in Scotland and across the UK. This must be done by supporting and promoting positive action to tackle underrepresentation, requiring employers to report what steps they are taking to promote inclusive training and skills provisions, and supporting a requirement under UK legislation for employers to consult on new technology, including the use of equality impact assessments, which employers must act upon. Congress, please support this motion.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on Unison to speak in support of the composite motion. Stephen.
Thanks, President. Stephen Swiley, Unison, supporting the composite. I should also say I'm a member of the Just Transition Commission on behalf of the STUC. Just transition is a concept that is ours. It is developed by trade unions in previous struggles and developed to address current challenges, including the ultimate challenge of climate catastrophe. Like all good ideas and trade union principles, it would be better if we'd actually fought and won them before now. But hey-ho, we are where we are, so we continue to fight, and we must fight harder for a just transition. It's a concept, however, that's been adopted by others, governments, including Saudi Arabia, calling for a just transition for oil-producing countries, even business and corporations. So it can become a bit meaningless, or it can mean anything you want it to mean. So we need to reiterate just what a just transition means, and that's protecting the future of workers, our members, our communities and our class, whether due to transitioning to net zero or the introduction of artificial intelligence. It's also about addressing current injustices and not replicating them in a transitioned future economy. So the economy that currently discriminates against women and minorities employed in the social infrastructure of care, health and education, we must not replicate that in the new net zero or future economy. Just transition should be and is about calling for an industrial strategy, something which this country, Scotland and the UK, not had for a long time, so not therefore long overdue. An industrial strategy that addresses the weaknesses in the existing economy and creates jobs, green jobs in this case, jobs that promote a sustainable future. And that's why Unison's contribution to the composite is calling for a national investment plan in key industries and sectors, including in the social infrastructure of care, health and education, existing green jobs that will be as important as all sectors in the future. Support the composite. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you for all the work that you do for Unison and the General Council on the Just Transition Commission. Conference that was, oh, actually, sorry, I'm doing what I told Lillian not to do yesterday. Can we have other supporting and opposing speakers? Sorry, Kirsty.
Thank you. Congress Chair, just Kirsty Miller, Equity. I just wanted to speak briefly on the AI aspect of this composite motion. Equity has an ongoing campaign called Stop AI Stealing the Show. The performing arts are in real danger of losing work and their personal IP to the ongoing march of AI. AI is not going to go away. We need to have conversations about it. We need to have sensible grown-up conversations about it. There is a place for AI in lots of different areas. Personally, I don't think it's in the world of arts, but you know, that's just me. Several members have had their person stolen and used in places that they have not given permission for. I think we need to seriously look at what the implications for AI are within the performing arts and in the workforce across. Workers need to keep control of their autonomy, and let's face it, we were all promised a future where we would be allowed to go and do interesting things and the robots did all the rubbish jobs while we got paid properly. So please think carefully about AI and the other aspects of this motion, and I wholeheartedly support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Next speaker, please.
Chair, Congress. Eddie Burns, EIS. Teachers are positively encouraged to use AI in resource creation, feedback, differentiation, with next to no systematic or standardised training. Not all teachers are equally tech savvy, I'm certainly not, despite the upskilling that we all experienced during the pandemic. In any case, most of the tools and platforms mastered during that time are now considered obsolete in the wake of the AI revolution. For many teachers, the implications of AI are an exciting opportunity for learning and development. For many others, it represents the daunting prospect of yet another paradigm shift in educational delivery. There must be national leadership on this issue so that all teachers and support staff feel supported and resourced as we transition to a new educational landscape. As the latest EI Education International report on the use of AI in education states, quote, "It is essential to provide teachers with the training and support they need to effectively evaluate AI tools and how to incorporate them into their teaching practice." And there's the usual workload rub. Getting the time and the space for training and evaluation required to do this effectively and sustainably, rather than simply adding it to the top of an already overwhelming pile. We must also ensure that AI is not owned and controlled only by employers with a view to replacing teachers and support staff in classrooms. At the moment, the AI tail is wagging the educational dog. We must get this virtual mutt under control before it turns on all of us. Please support.
Thank you, Delegate. Next speaker, please. Are there any further speakers in the debate? No, thank you. That was Composite Q, Artificial Intelligence and Automation and Just Transition. Please note that the General Council recommends support. I'll now move you to the vote. Can I see all those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Composite Q, Artificial Intelligence, Automation and Just Transition is carried. I now call Amended Motion 6, Fighting for Offshore Oil and Gas Workers. Can I invite the RMT to move the amended motion? Thank you, colleague.
Thank you, President. Hello, Congress. David Douglas, RMT, moving Motion 6, Fighting for Offshore Oil and Gas Workers. Congress, with a great deal of dismay and concern, RMT estimates that in 2024 more than 2,000 offshore oil and gas workers were made redundant in the North Sea. 70% of the 47,000 workforce are subcontracted or in bogus self-employment day rate contracts. Redundancy consultants are spread over platforms and avoid press attention and scrutiny. I should say redundancy consultations, sorry. Meanwhile, the multinationals such as Petrofac, Shell and BP rake in record levels of profit and also reap the benefits of green energy contracts through ScotWind and Crown Estate Scotland, along with the ensuing profits from the developing offshore wind sector. None of these arrangements or agreements require any commitment to trade union recognition for the workers involved in that supply chain. Yet again, we see multinationals benefit from the exploitation of a vulnerable local workforce. As the oil industry continues to decommission, there does not appear to be anything remotely like a just transition for our members. I'm sure the workforce at Grangemouth would agree. Whilst RMT welcome the long-awaited introduction of a skills passport and the establishment of GB Energy in Aberdeen, we must question where this positions our members in the future. Redeployment in a shrinking jobs market and voluntary redundancy capped at statutory rates is leaving a workforce with decades of experience and a transferable skill set in an impossible situation. Factor in the barriers to retraining, monetise gatekeeping on the duplication of certification, and 20% lower pay scales in the renewables sectors makes it far less likely that these essential skills and knowledge will be retained locally. Motion 6 calls for Congress to work with RMT and the Offshore Coordinating Group to ensure that negotiated terms and conditions of all offshore energy jobs and the related supply chain are agreed through sectoral collective bargaining. Furthermore, that Crown Estate Scotland is reformed and tasked with diverting ScotWind leasing funds to employment and retraining schemes for offshore oil and gas workers, and that any subsequent leasing agreements commit to training and employment clauses for the local workforce. The same conditions should apply to decommissioning and carbon capture schemes. The ACON project is a great example of this, estimated to involve supporting 11,000 jobs during construction and commissioning and 4,700 long-term roles. A recent report commissioned by Crown Estate Scotland regarding offshore wind suggested 21,000 jobs and a £96 billion investment over 15 years. A woefully depressed jobs estimate in which reflects the current loopholes in employment rights in the offshore wind sector, as well as a lack of manufacturing capacity and supply chain skills. Current projects in the sector contain as little as 38% local content. Another huge factor in this is the exploitation of low-cost foreign agency crews on flag of convenience vessels. The quickest way to achieve sectoral collective bargaining in the offshore and green energy sector is to end this exploitative and restrictive practice and extend the Employment Rights Bill's fair pay agreements into both sectors. This reflects current STUC policy and would slot nicely into any future devolved employment rights. I move.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call the GMB to second the amended motion. Thank you, Delegate.
President, Congress, Tom Kirkpollock, GMB Scotland, seconding motion 6. Congress, another year has passed and yet again very little has changed for energy workers. A successful oil and gas industry has been forced into decline, and with it the jobs and livelihoods of thousands and their communities. On being elected, the Labour UK government immediately slapped a tax on sectors sparking a fight from the North Sea. Investment is going abroad as our political leaders continue to make workers false promises of jobs tomorrow. Take GB Energy, for example. But there is no clear example of broken promises in Grangemouth. To the average person, an oil-producing nation being unable to refine its own oil is ludicrous, bordering on bizarre. But under the just transition, this makes perfect sense. The outsourcing of our energy infrastructure and security to other countries, the promise of jobs in the future, and at some undisclosed time, all whilst our domestic industry is decimated. The takeover of the yards at Amish and Methil has been welcomed, but the promise of renewables work still fails to be delivered. When you read about politicians welcoming new wind farms, those turbines are not manufactured in Scotland. They come on a diesel barge from Indonesia, the Emirates, everywhere but Scotland. Amish relies on oil and gas work. Without it, it would not survive, proving how vital oil and gas is to existing industry. In Methil, equipment has rusted over 40 years of neglect. Plans are in place to invest in the yards so they can benefit from renewables work. This will take years while workers have nowhere to go. Politicians have failed workers. The trade union movement cannot. We have to be prepared to face up to the realities being inflicted on the energy workforce and not view the just transition through rose-tinted glasses. We need a plan that moves at pace and at scale. Congress, please support the motion.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on any other supporting or opposing speakers in the debate. Come forward, please.
Cliff Bowen, United Union, speaking in support of the motion. Congress, this week we've heard from the SNP and Labour leadership, we've heard more empty slogans, promises about industrial intervention assurances, I'm not even sure what that means if I'm honest, and again, just transitions. And I would ask you all, where is the intervention or the just transition for the Grangemouth site? Because it's not just the 500 jobs there, it's the 3,000 jobs wrecked in my community. And we can have an intervention for bankers, and we welcome the one in steel, but where is the one for oil and gas? I would ask you all. And let's be very clear, Congress, at the very first hurdle of a just transition, both governments have failed and failed my community. Chucked working class kids' futures on the scrap heap. And this is coming to a town that's got oil and gas everywhere that's connected to oil and gas, right up and down the cities and towns in our country very soon. Because there is no plan for a just transition for workers, not one that will meet the demands that we need right now. And I've been saying this at every speech that I've given in the last 5 years, and nobody's listened in the political world, both governments. And we're going to end up exactly like the miners unless we do something as a movement, unless we have some kind of intervention from both governments. And listen, we accept the need for an energy transition. We understand that. And everybody's quick to tell us in oil and gas that we need to transition. But we can't do it at the expense of working class kids' futures in these communities, because that's exactly what's happening at the moment. We're exporting jobs, we're importing carbon from despotic regimes that didn't care about LGBTQ+, they didn't care about human rights. And we're propping up their exchequers and we're wrecking our communities and the futures of our kids at the same time. And Congress, be under no illusions, voters in these towns are not going to forgive, and they're not going to forget what's happening on their watch. So solidarity to every oil and gas worker that's lost their jobs, because it's happening already. And it's not the numbers we're seeing in the refineries, but it's a death by 1,000 cuts, 50 here, 100 there. But it's going to mount up over the years. And solidarity to the refinery workers as well. Support the motion.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any other speakers in the debate? Thank you. That was motion 6, fighting for offshore oil and gas workers. Please note that the General Council recommends support. I'll now take you to the vote. Can I see all those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Amended motion 6, fighting for offshore gas and oil workers, is carried.